Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we are coming back at you. This time, finally, we're diving into some Silent Hill action. It's in the title, but we haven't, out of 13, it took us 13 episodes to get to a Silent Hill game. Yeah. But of course, we've mentioned it throughout time, but we are going with Silent Hill, Shattered Memories, the PS2 version, though I've always wanted to play this on the Wii, which is what it's initially made for, and you could totally tell that that's how it was designed, but then they ported it like a year later, the PS2 and PSP in 2010. It came out in 2009 on the Wii. And it's funny, this game's actually worth a lot now, this PS2 one, but when I bought this one, it was like the Wii version was like, I'm like, man, do I want to pay $50 for the used version of the Wii one? I'll pay $20 for the PS2 one, and lo and behold, that PS2 one's now like stupidly expensive. And the other one I bought too was, I found that, I was like, oh, I forgot I had Silent Hill Origins. I never even played this one. It's made by the same company that did Shattered Memories. Mm-hmm. But it's one that I've literally had sitting in my stack, because I probably bought those in the early 2010s, like when they were kind of still fresh, you know, and nobody cared about them at that point. They're those ones that like, or the Silent Hill Shattered Memories one I've had sitting there forever. I've always wanted to give it a go. I knew it was kind of different, but since it was a remake of one, it always kind of interested me. I'm like, you know what? I love the living daylights out of Silent Hill 1. Let's see this reimagining, this alternative take that they have there. I did know going into it that it didn't have any, I know that it even says on the back, like, there's no, like, real, like, combat and so on like that, which is always, like, that's always kind of an iffy one for me when I think of survival horror games. You know, is it going to do that, like, hide-and-seek stuff that's always kind of gimmicky and silly and so on? Ironically, this one does not do that at all. It has something completely different in it that you normally don't see in probably any survival horror games. But it's also at the weird time, too. It's like, you probably could just take those scenes out, and I don't think you'd be missing anything, you know? But
it's those sections in particular, man, like that is easily like, it's just annoying. Like every time they pop up, you know, and like they're few and far between enough, you know, but I 100% agree with you. Like just gut them out of the game, you know, like there's no necessity for them, you know, like, but yeah, I think like in general, yeah. I mean, to go back to what you were talking about a second ago about like the PS2 version of this, as mentioned multiple times, you know, I've been retro collecting for a minute now, and like, you know, you brought this game up, and I was like, oh, cool, you know, like another opportunity to buy another PS2 game. Hop on the disc, dude, just the disc, no case, no manual. It's like $300. I'm like, nope. Nope.
It's stupid how expensive that. And I remember when I bought that PS2 one, I was doing that thing like, man, the Wii version's like $40 or $50. I don't know if I want to pay that much for. And now the Wii version's like $300 for that one.
Right.
Which it's, you know, sadly enough would be kind of the way to go, I still think, is if you could play the Wii version, like, you know, because this is the weird thing about the Wii, though, is like it's not the, you know, you can emulate the Wii really easily, but you would still, because you don't have the Wii mote, you know, and I know there's people that have made, you know, adapters and so on that you can kind of have it, you know, so if you get real, like, you know, technical, you can hook that sort of up, but like there is something to be said, because this game's almost weirdly designed like a proto VR game is almost the best way you can kind of say it. Kind of the same way I remember when we were playing Soma, and I was going like, this should be a VR game. Why is this not made on VR? It's just the way you're grabbing things and moving stuff and manipulating it. And this one, that's the same thing here. Of course, if you have your Wiimote, you can grab, pull, you know, manipulate all the stuff there. Instead, you're doing it on the PS2 controller. Not bad, but, you know, not the exact same.
I'd say it's a little clunky, but it was the very first thing in this game that took me by surprise, and exactly that. It reminded me of Soma, you know, like, because we just had that episode not terribly long ago, and it's like how tactile the world is, you know, like they're like one of the first doors you open, you know, like is a crossbar on a door, so you have like this sliding bar back and forth, and it has a little pin lock in it, you know, and like you have to like hover your little mouse over and like grab the pin and pull it up and drop it out and then slide the lock, but it's tactile that way, and I think it's really neat, you know, that exists, you know. The other side of this too is like I walked into this knowing nothing about this game. I didn't even know of its existence until you mentioned it. Granted, I fell out of Silent Hill after 3. I remember 4, The Room came out and all that, and never played it. And then like the next thing I know, it's like all the Western developer games, Silent Hill Origins, the thing you just pulled up, you know, like Homecoming, Shattered Memories. There's a breadth of them that came out, and I just missed that entire genre. I just hadn't played any of them. So walking into this, I had no idea what to expect other than your pretense of like, well, it's a reimagining of Silent Hill. And it's like, okay, well, I know Silent Hill well enough, so cool, like let's do this. But there is a lot of differences here. I personally kind of really liked the way that this game's story was told, the characters that it brought back from the original IP, but it really doesn't have anything to do with Silent Hill, like the original Silent Hill's like main story or anything. Like it robs the same characters. You're in Silent Hill, you go to the mall, you go to the school, you go to the apartment building, you go, like all these places that like we're familiar with, but it tells a brand new story here that like doesn't have anything to do with like Silent Hill's like cults and things like that, and I thought it was really neat actually. Biggest faults is like it's one like gameplay section of like just sprint and run and hope you find the right doors, basically to get to the next section. So, but
yeah, well, that is kind of the interesting thing is like, they do the reimagining. So you play as Harry once again. I know that it was kind of once the Silent Hill movie, the first one came out, they were kind of looking for ways of how to make like kind of almost a remake sort of similar to that, which almost are kind of surprised that they didn't just use this as the opportunity. Because really, when you think about the movie, like the only major thing that movie really kind of changes is instead of being Harry, you pretty much play as the mom instead, which I feel like movie-wise, it like worked totally well. I mean, that's one of those ones you could actually interchange that really easily, and it's like totally fine. That doesn't matter. And I think for the movie, it worked great. And I'm surprised it's almost not like that here. Strangely, this game here, you almost literally could have brand new characters in it, and you could still do the exact same story, and it'd be like totally fine because it's so radically kind of different of the names and so on like that. Beyond that, it's hey, Harry shows up to Silent Hill. He gets in a car accident with his daughter. When he wakes up, his daughter's gone, and instead of the ash raining down from the underground fires in Silent Hill, it's now snowing, which I think is kind of a cool, interesting concept. To kind of give it that little bit of like that northern hemisphere kind of a town section.
Yes. Yep.
And
from what I understood is that there's I don't know if this game ever came out or not. I didn't figure this portion out, but Silent Hill Cold Heart was what this game's origin story was supposed to be. Like they were developing a title called Silent Hill Cold Heart. And it was supposed to be about a character named Jessica Chambers. It's like some kind of college student or whatever. She ends up in Silent Hill. She's the one that crashes. And that game was centered around Konami's producers essentially like seeing how well the Wii was doing and wanting to create, a Silent Hill game for the Wii. So that was the original concept. And there's like all this design documentation of what that game was going to be. It was very heavy, like in terms of like survival itself, to where you had to collect and find food. You had to like clothe yourself, because of the coldness and whatnot. There was different things with your heart and whatnot about like if you're hot or cold and like it changing the environment around you and whatnot. So like there's all these like little pieces of what that design document shows that leaked into this game. And this game has been, from what I understand, redesigned like a good 2 or 3 times, from that original core concept to what we actually got. So like a little bit of the background of what I've done some research on and whatnot was actually like super interesting. And I assume if I've mentioned Cold Heart 3 or 4 times now and you don't recognize it, I doubt that game exists. So
yeah, I knew that this one was one of those ones like in 2006, I think is when they kind of started getting the ideas. And I think that's what they kind of did is they had that Cold Heart one. And they sort of jammed it together with like they wanted to do a remake. So they kind of fused those ideas. And then because at this point you start having, I'm assuming it's an American company that's putting these together. I don't think it's a European company.
Yeah.
But because you could tell that right off the bat that because this game's not made by Japanese people. So like they almost like it looks kind of radically different. Even the characters themselves and so on. They don't have that anime look to them like they have in the first especially 3 games. I almost want to say 4 even still has some pretty anime looking stuff to it. Sounds weird, but like they start to shuffle the anime look out at about this time period in about the 2010s out of a lot of games, especially when the Japanese start not making as many ones. perfect example is like Cybil, the police officer, looks quite different. You know, she doesn't
Way
have
different.
that. You know, almost if she didn't say her name, you wouldn't even think it's the same character.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of have that little bit of a change there, and just some other stuff. But I think that's what they did, is they fused a lot of ideas. But when you really think about this game, 2010, by the time or 9 for the Wii, 9 and 10, it's so late in the game for so many of those systems. It's like a weird time period because for the Wii, it's at a standard time, and the Wii is kind of a weird system anyways because it's one step behind everything else. It's just riding on kind of its, you know, controls and its like uniqueness and so on. And the fact that Konami's like, you know what, we want to branch out our Silent Hill platform to a wider audience. The Wii, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yep.
Sure, I guess that's a wider one. But at this time, it's like, it's weird because it's like 360 and PS3 are pretty far along on their like path. So this game, you know, if you're getting it on PS2 at this time period, you realistically, it's like only the most hardcore Silent Hill people are buying it. That's why it's so rare to this day.
Yeah.
You know, for the fact that like there's no casual gamer that's going to buy a Silent Hill on a 4 years in from the other systems. Console run.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be you know, so this game launching on the Wii and then being post-developed onto PS2 and PSP, I'm curious to see like what sales data looked like during that time period or whatever, to see if that was actually like, was this game always intended to be designed for the PS2, you know, like coincidingly with the Wii, or was it always a Wii title, sold poorly, and then, you know, got ported or whatever? Like I'm really curious to figure that side of it out. So
well, because I want to say it's literally like 1 year apart. Maybe no, it's not that far off. Take that back. The Wii comes out in America in 2009 December. It comes out in PS2 in January. So
so it's so
realistically, so they're only a month apart. So it was meant to sell on the Wii first and foremost, and then I thought there was more time in between that. That's kind of interesting.
Yep.
And then so it came out on PSP and stuff, so on. And now PSP, I will say, at that time period, it does seem like it's totally makes sense on the PSP as well. That feels like it fits pretty well there. You know, the PS2 feels more like that's the bonus system that it's kind of on.
Well, one of my first comments to you when I first got going, like actually sat down to go play this, was like, I had asked, I was like, you know, is this a PS3 title? Did this come out on PS3 at some point? You know, because like it's so strange, like you said, to have like a 2009 Wii game come out, it get ported to a console that came out fucking 8 years earlier, and not the newer ones. But because it looks and it plays like what I picture of like what a Wii title being ported to a PS3 would look like. It's a Wii game in general, but like its graphics, its smoothness, its frame rates, it's like all that type of stuff. Like it feels like a PS3 game, you know, like, and I'm playing PS2 emulation, so that could be part of it too. You know, it's just like upscaling and all the other stuff that's going on in the background. But overall, like I'm baffled that this is a PS2 game, you know, in 2010. You know, like,
it's really futuristic for the PS2, like, you know, and the fact that like, once again, you could play it physically on there and so on like that. I played it still on the emulator myself just for that sake, but the fact that I have it, you know, you could. But yeah. And I'm going to say one of the things that's kind of interesting when this thing first starts off that really makes it different than all the other Silent Hill games is the fact that you start off in a psychiatrist's office right at the very beginning. And this is probably one of the most unique things about it. And throughout the entire game, you keep coming back to the psychiatrist and you go over things and he asks you questions and he's kind of snarky and he kind of pushes you and he's always drinking alcohol. You're like, wait a second, like like this guy's like an alcoholic. He's just making himself martinis all the time and so on. But I think that's like such an interesting one because you go through these like questionnaires and stuff, and it really does give this game like a lot of different experiences you can have. Of course, there's like 5 different endings and so on like that. You know, at least the game's not really that long. It only, I don't know, probably took us, give or take, 5 to 6 hours to beat. Granted, I don't think I'd play it 5 times over, but... I don't think I would either, you know, like... But, you know, like, to its credit, I do think that it is a very, like, flowy game. Like, because I sat down last Saturday and just, like, you know, because I had picked it up here and there, you know, like, the week leading into that weekend. And eventually, like, just got to a point where, like, I played it, dropped it for a couple nights, played it again a little bit, dropped it for a couple nights. Then the weekend rolled around and it was just like,
I'm just gonna restart, just fresh, right from the beginning, and basically start to finish. Played it in like 5 or 6 hours. I think I started at 11 and finished at like 6 with some breaks in between, and whatnot, and was like perfect. Like it just flows really well. Like its storytelling is good enough that just it kept me interested and kept me like along for the ride and whatnot. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, and I think that's the biggest strength is I think the story and just the way that it's told and its pacing and all that stuff is fantastic. It's one of those few games where it's like that's the part that really kind of rides strong. The gameplay is kind of it's simple. It's more of like you're literally aimlessly walking around, going through Silent Hill. In the beginning too, it's almost plays like Luigi's Mansion, where like you can literally go. I think if you press X, it's like Cheryl.
Yeah,
Cheryl.
Yeah, exactly.
Mario.
Yeah,
that was all I thought about. It's like you could literally go around. That feature goes away after like the first chapter or so. I don't know. Yeah. Probably because they're like, we don't want people to get annoyed every time they hit X that he keeps saying that. Yep. But because this game, I felt like I literally just like throughout it, like I just kind of stumbled into where to go next all the time. I mean. It does have a feature that is kind of it reminds me you mentioned it too, but like of Grand Theft Auto 4, you get a cell phone at one point, and that's kind of where Harry's got all his information on. You can take pictures, you get calls, you get text messages, you have your GPS, all this kind of stuff, and that's like how a lot of the stuff's told. So like instead of finding notes and things like that, you find random text messages that appear on your screen.
Oh, I got a new voicemail.
Yeah, you get new voicemails for some reason. Like people keep leaving me here. There's a camera feature where you have to go and search for kind of like ghosts and so on. So it reminds me kind of like Fatal Frame, which I will, when you first kind of did that was the part that kind of, I don't know what it is. There's like some type of dread when you're like, okay, you're Harry. And then when you're looking through a camera in a video, like it's almost like multiple layers. I don't know what it is when you're walking around with that searching for stuff that it gives this weird extra feel of kind of fear that just kind of pops on.
Oh yeah.
Well, when you're looking through another object, I don't know what it is about that. And even though in this game, nothing can happen to you technically from that. Yeah. It does leave this weird, like, this is kind of, I don't know. You feel like something's gonna pop up and get me.
And that's its. I think in its exploration bits and like you're getting the key to open the door and do the thing and get the note and all the thing. That is like the number one thing. Like so from the very start of this game, it's like cutscene plays in. Harry's come flying in off the road. He crashes into the light pole. He falls out of the car. He's like laying in the snow and blah blah blah. From you like waking up in like and again like direct comparison to the original game when Harry wakes up in the original game and it's just empty streets and just very foggy and just like and back then like physical hardware rendering wasn't able like so they always put fog in anyways to like keep up with frame rates and things like that so it built on that tension. This game does that flawlessly. I feel like its intro is so eerie and so good because I didn't know what to expect because again like I walked into this completely blind. It's a Silent Hill 1 reimagining. That's all I knew. And like I'm anticipating like something to like scurry across the floor or like like the monster in the closet or like whatever like unfortunately a lot of that like because there is no combat really in this game like so like none of that like really happened, but its tension and its tone and its like atmosphere surrounding everything, it just nails what Silent Hill actually is, and I thought that was very, very good. So
yeah, no, it captures that I think really well, and just the whole vibe and just the whole running around stuff, even if it is kind of aimlessly running. Yeah, you do kind of feel this weird kind of interesting kind of fear. And just when you find the different ghost photos and you find the different little like small story stuff. And granted, I feel like it's one of those ones that like everybody's kind of play through. You kind of either you run across stuff or you don't. Like it's not like, I mean, you don't really know how you're going to run across it unless you just do. It'll make the kind of staticky sound on your camera, no different than the radio back in the original one. And then, or on your phone, I guess, not the camera, but and then you find, okay, here's this and this leads me to another message and so on, and maybe sometimes they become puzzle clues and what have you, and you progress your way through the story that way. And then the only type of not really combat they have, but like they have these weird segments, and I feel that this is just the only somewhat weak part of the game, is they have this thing where about 6 to 8 times I guess throughout here is they have these nightmare sections. and everything will freeze around, which is kind of a cool effect. It
Yeah.
just everything turns to ice and whatnot like that, so you're in a nightmare section. And then Harry just has to run literally as aimlessly as possible, just opening random doors, hopefully hoping that you're going to finally find the exit here and so on. And in the process, there's these little hooligan kids that come running out at you and jump on you, and you got to mash square or triangle or whatever. And then you just keep running. And if you can't find the place in time, eventually those hooligan kids will knock you down and you kind of die, but you don't really. You just literally wake up and have to do that over again. And it's one of those features where it's like, I see where someone had an interesting concept and so on like that. Yeah. But it is kind of like that one where maybe if it only happened like twice in the game, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But like, since it does happen a couple times, they're more kind of like obnoxious. You're like, okay, here we go again. I don't really know where I'm running. I just kind of aimlessly run, and eventually I make it or I don't make it, know.
Yep.
And almost to the point that when I finally kind of got farther in it, I just was like, I'm just gonna pull up a guide. I'm like, I don't want to have to do this like 3 or 4 times. It's kind of goofy, and these guys are kind of annoying that keep jumping on me and so on like that.
So the nice part is though, one credit that I'll give it is that yes, like you said, I think the visual design of the nightmare sequences are badass. They're awesome. Like I love walking into a new area, everything like starts to turn blue and starts to ice over, and buildings are starting to morph, and like things are like moving and shit, and it's very psychological. Like I enjoy that portion of it. The other thing is like in those sections of like I'm just running circles trying to find the right goddamn door or whatever. Luckily, there's this is good, but there's also a problem with it. You can always open up your phone, you can look at your map, and luckily this game like has a tracer system, so it like shows you where you've been, like based off like your line that you took, which is good, so at least you like, okay, I've been through that door, I've done that door, I've done that door, I'm missing that door, cool, I'll run to that door. The problem is though is that when you have 5 or 6 of these little fucking kids running after you or whatever, you can't pull out your phone and look at it because it's all real time, and like they just jump on you and you fucking kill your ass, and it's like, god damn it, but at the same token, like I don't know, I wish that in these sections, because of how cool the visual design was and how much I really, really enjoyed just studying the environment and walking, slow walking through Silent Hill and its normal, sections out of these nightmare modes. I just wanted to explore those, and you can't. Like, I mean, like you can bust through like 3 or 4 doors and hope that those kids behind you like just haven't gotten up to you, and like you might have 5 seconds of like, oh, look around with my flashlight real quick, just to see, but there's like not really much there. And like I wish that they would have, even if they would have brought in more of like the hiding mechanics, because you can like hide underneath a bed, or you can hide in a closet, or you can, but like I never found the reason to, because there's nothing to find in these areas. Well,
you don't really want to hide, you want to keep running. Like that feels like you're more like on a time limit, because the longer you wait in that frozen world, the more of those little bastards show up, so it's one of those ones. The other way I thought those sequences could have gone, and this in 2010 it probably would have been too out of the question, but they almost should have made them more like on rails, maybe even quick time events. Like I think that where just Harry's, especially on the Wii, would have been perfect, because then you could have shake the Wii remote, swing the nunchuck or whatnot. And maybe it could have been one of those ones where Harry's running, and then like one of those little creatures bust out of the wall, and you have to shake him off you. Sure. And maybe they could have put a little bit more, because they only have this one monster design that I did read. Apparently, depending on your actions with the psychiatrist, they change their form, but they don't really change a whole lot. They just look like clay children with weird body parts and so on. Yeah. But I felt like you could have had maybe a little bit more of like the actual Silent Hill monsters. And I think really just like an on rails, like running scene. And, you could just have scary moments where, have the dog jump out, gets on, bite you on the leg, and you have to like shake him off, tap square, and something like that. And I think that almost would have been kind of a little bit better than, and then just leave the rest of the game to be like, okay, now we're just going to neander and search. And because that's sometimes like, I think works kind of better in Silent Hill, is that you don't have to worry every second that something's trying to kill you, that you can actually take in like the eeriness of the place and so on like that. Yeah.
That's what Silent Hill's always been for me. It's like Silent Hill's never been about its combat. Its combat's clunky as fuck, like at least in the 3 games that I've played, and it's just never been about that. It's always been about the environmental storytelling. It's about that oozy atmosphere and just, dark dank hallways, and like I genuinely love Silent Hill, and this game nails it in some regards, but falls on its face in so many others, and it's like, but I do think that it was a good attempt at it. And like you said, like I think that there's so much more that could have been done with this, but this feels very, very, very experimental. And I suppose it's because they were testing something on the Wii,
Yeah.
So
And I always give companies kind of credit for trying out stuff, because sometimes you're never going to know until you try. And sometimes it's like, hey, here we go. We got the Wii. Let's try something here. And for the most part, like I think for the base storyline, it is good. It's just these running segments are just kind of, they're kind of weird. That's probably the best way. They're not god awful, but they are. They would suck if you got instant game over like on these things. Then they would like kill this game fast. But I'm glad that this game's at least very forgiving. That like, no, you just wake back up again. You got to run it over. It's just, but it is still time consuming enough that you kind of go. Just give me the guide. Door. Okay, we're back on the story.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I'd be interesting. So another comment that I made to you pretty early, and this is just like on the emulator or whatever. Like transitioning through doors on the emulator is bad frame drops, like down to near nothing. It's like stutter through the door, and then, but it also has this thing like where like Harry like wants to like grab the door, because there's like two ways to like open a door. You either sprint right through it and he just busts it open and he just runs right through or whatever, or you kind of walk up to it, hit X, he like grabs it, and it's like one of those like push and like slowly kind of like push your head in the next room, but there's a load screen in there somewhere that's hidden. It's not like a physical load screen, but there's like some kind of loading going on in there. And on the emulator, in these sections where you're just busting door to door to door, it's just like 60 frames, hella fast, everything smooth, great, looking great, and then chunk, and then like another few steps, chunk, it's just like, oh my god, and it just made it that much worse. I'd be so curious to see like what that looks like on PS2, like the proper disc version.
Well, because once again I played on the emulation version. I would notice it was whenever I'd go through those like doors, but it didn't slow down for me. It almost felt like it sped up in a weird way when I went through the doors. One mechanic I think is actually kind of interesting, speaking of just the doors themselves, is that when you do that slow open, it's like, and you can do it like in like the regular world, not just like the running sections. It feels like it's a mechanic that was supposed to be in there so you could kind of peek inside and see, but there's literally nothing about, there's no other enemies out in the regular world, so why do you have a peeking mechanic? It just felt like that was in the initial versions of the game. Like, I'm not taking that out. I already put it in there. I made a real nice door opening motion. Hell if I'm taking that out.
And especially with the, like I said, like pull the pin and, slide the lock type thing. Like, in terms of Soma, because everything is tactile in Soma, you have to physically grab the door and open the door or whatever. Like, make it more like that, like, and granted, like Soma's like a way later developed game, but like if it had more things like that where the environment was a lot more interactable, like probably would have played really well into this. But I think not having enemies in the core game itself outside of these nightmare sections totally ruins things like that. And I very much agree with you. It's just like, they probably developed it with a plan in mind. That plan probably fell on its face through QA testing or something, and it was just like, well, the animation's so good, so leave it in. I wholly agree with you there. So
you know what? I don't know why I didn't piece this together, but I'm probably the whole reason for that door opening thing is that on the Wii you would grab it and pull backwards, and that's probably the only reason why it's in there. So on the PS2 it makes it feel like it's a peeking mechanic, but it probably was not even thought about being that. Yeah. It was. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together. But I'm like, wait a second, that's probably the reason why the door is like that, because I kept thinking of it being like you were trying to peek in there, and if there was a monster you could slam the door. But probably on the Wii you wouldn't think anything of it. It's just like, well, you need to go from pull it back and there you go, doors open, Harry walks through. That's probably what it was all about.
That's what I'm thinking, because like even in those nightmare sections, like if you do like from the very get-go, especially when you only have one of those things on you, like they're pretty easy to get away from for the most part. So once you break through a couple different doors and you get some distance on those things, like I was messing around just for fun. I was messing around with that mechanic to see if it was like, would the monster just kind of hang out in a room? Can I like peek in to like see him or whatever? But no, the monster's always on the chase. Like it never hangs out somewhere and like loses you officially. Like they're always on top of you. So Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's just like a crisscross thing, and maybe like you said, maybe it is the version we're playing, that just suffered from that. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's kind of probably what it is. I don't know why I didn't think of it like that, but yeah. But that beyond that though, it's like if it's, once again, those scenes aren't god awful. They're just kind of a little bit. Yeah, they tried something. I'll give them credit for that, but that's about all they kind of are. The rest of it, just like, you're aimlessly walking through Silent Hill and figuring out the story and running into the characters. That's where this one really shines. And then to complement it with I will say, is the psychiatrist too, because when you get to some of those scenes, like there's one that I thought was really neat where he gives you like this coloring page and he's like, so I want you just to color your house, and it's like there's a picture of like there's like a neighbor there and there's a car and there's a house in the front yard and the trees, and you just sit there like Mario Paint style filling this thing in. Like I actually spent more time on that than I probably should have. I don't know why I did, but I thought this was the coolest thing. Is one of the first things Harry does after you meet Cybil. He's like, hey, I just need to go to my house. I'm going to look for my daughter, see if she showed up there. And Sybil's just like, sure, whatever, go for it. Give me a call later or something like that. She doesn't suspect him being weird or anything at this point. So he goes to this house, and you have that psychiatrist meeting beforehand. Whatever color you decide that house was, that's what it looks like when you get there. I thought that was badass. I was like, if you, because I colored my car pink and everything like that. So the car out the front was pink.
Yep. No, I very much enjoyed this whole therapist thing too, because I don't know if you're familiar with them, because but like the Until Dawn games, the Dark Horse Picture games like Man of Medan, and like I can't remember the name of all of them, but there's a handful of games like The Devil in Me and whatnot. They're like movie style games, but all of them have a psychiatrist section in between chapters and whatnot. It's insanely reminiscent of this, so to see this from its era, like based off, or not based off, but games that I like nowadays, like still using that same core concept, is very, very interesting. And I love, like you said, like the interactions that you have with the psychiatrist throughout the totality of this game are changing your play, like as you're going. Not only is it doing like branching paths and whatnot in terms of its storytelling, but like you said, like it's physically changing the environment, and that's really cool. I really, really enjoyed that.
And I think that a lot of the stuff that makes this game really neat is all those little features like that. And it's like, that's just, I think it's just so cool. And you keep going to the psychiatrist and he always has new questions for you. He's always got this kind of stuff. And so like, as you kind of piecing it along, and you're seeing it always from a first person's perspective. So you really have no idea, almost at first you're just thinking it's like, okay, it's just Harry and maybe this is it. Cause you don't really know where this story's going, how much it relates to the first one. And so on like that. You just know, okay, he's looking for his daughter, and here's this guy kind of going this, and he's almost asking it, because it's so first person, it's more like he's asking you, the player, not necessarily you as Harry or whoever it is there. All these things, and like they ask some kind of like intense questions too throughout it, which is kind of interesting. I do like how it goes there. I mean, Silent Hill, you'd kind of expect that.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, well, those ones where you can see some people looking over their shoulder, like, how am I gonna answer this?
Yep.
Like I need some confidentiality here. I'm in my psychiatrist meeting here at Silent Hill Memories or Shattered Memories, but
there is one other thing that I caught earlier too. So in mentioning that Cold Heart version of this game or whatever. So the Wii had a feature where it had its Connect 24 or whatever, and it basically means like online mode for the Wii. In that mode, there was on the Wii that you had the weather station on there, and it would track based off where you live and like current weather conditions of that area. That there was in that design document, what they were attempting to do is further change the way that your game is presented to yourself based off the weather of your current zone, like where you live. So like at night when the temperature drops, it gets colder in the game and whatnot, so if you're playing it like 9 p.m. night, in your real time or whatever, it's getting colder in the game. If you're playing at 12 p.m., it's warmer in the game or whatever. And it would like physically like change the world and whatnot. something like that would have been so like that is so experimental, but like something like that would have been so cool, you know, to see. So.
Yeah, that would have been cool because that just reminds me of a couple games that kind of use something similar like that. One of the first ones I remember ever seeing that in was Pokemon Gold and Silver, because it did use your internal or it had, you set the time in the game's battery, and you know, so if you're playing it in the daytime, it was daytime, but if it was nighttime, it was nighttime, and you could catch different Pokemon and so on like that. And I almost want to say it even had, there might have been, I couldn't remember if it had like a Monday through Sunday type thing, but certain things would happen on certain days too, which, you know, there's all kinds of those bonus features. And then a more modern game that I think of that has like that weather thing is Microsoft's Flight Simulator has it, where you have real world weather. So whatever, if you're flying out right now over California, whatever it is right now, the sun's exactly in that position, the clouds are and everything. Of course, you can manipulate it if you want, which I thought that was one of the cool things. First thing I did, I'm like, let's make it -50 and have it like snowing in San Francisco. I want to see what it looks like with like, you know, 15 feet of snow on the Golden Gate Bridge as I fly through in a blizzard. You know.
Not to break up on a tangent real quick, but to talk about Flight Simulator, dude, that game has so many cool features, especially with the live mapping and the like all the live stuff that it has in it. I love flying because I can like fly over my house, dude. It's like, yep, there it is.
That was like the first thing I did when I got that, when Microsoft, like the new version of Flight Simulator came out. I got the slowest plane in that game, and I was just flying as slow as I could be, just seeing all the things that I know. It's like, yeah, there's my house, there's my friends' houses, there's all the stuff I know. You know, yeah, that's one of those ones that just has all those cool extra features in it and so on. But in Silent Hill, that would have been kind of a neat one too. The only downfall of some of those features is as cool as they can kind of be, it's like this game's not that long that like if you went to beat it, like you say you got it 5 o'clock at night and you beat it by like 11 at mid, you would never see any of those changes. Right. You know, it's kind of like the other one too is I'm just saying this because we were just playing it too, is the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, is that one has some time feature stuff in there too, that a lot of times it's like you normally won't see it because you're gonna beat the game in just a couple of days. But I know that like if you wait longer on your save file and so on like that, there's certain things that change. Of course, you can do the thing that it doesn't really work nowadays, but in the PS2 era, when you saved and turned the system off, you would heal and then you turn the system back on, and it was like, oh, okay, it's like you rested. You know, which nowadays it doesn't make a difference because the game just stays on unless you physically shut it down.
Exactly.
You know, but so there's always those kind of neat little features in there. There's a couple other time ones I know that happen in Metal Gear Solid 3. Like I want to say if you go farther and farther and farther, like Paramedic will have different lines and so on like that, because she kind of keeps a record of that.
My favorite thing is like the waiting for the end, you know, in the end fight in that game, and like if you just wait long enough, his ass just dies, you know, and like that's so cool, you know. So,
just one of those ones. If you can't find him, which sometimes it's a pain in the ass, I will say on this new one he's a little bit easier to track down. But yeah, one of those ones. But yeah, in Silent Hill that would be kind of a cool feature, and for the fact that, you know, the Wii had all those new, you know, you could hook up to the internet, you could have all those trackings and so on like that, but no, it doesn't have any of that. The game is you need to have sort of an RPG, I think, that incorporate those in there where you know you're going to be in here for at least 30 plus hours. But really going into like where this game kind of gets really interesting is when Harry starts meeting the different characters along the way. That's really the best part of this game. You know, the fact that you meet Cybil right off the bat. She does look a lot different. She doesn't look like the Cybil you know. You know, she's got a very more American look to her and so on, but she still is a police officer. She's still around the Silent Hill town. For some reason, none of this other stuff seems weird to her, that the town's completely empty and it's blizzard out and all that stuff. It's totally just a normal Tuesday, you know, for her.
She kind of has... like she almost reminds me, her redesign in this game almost reminds me of, to an extent, Jill from Resident, like the redesign of Jill from Resident Evil 1, like with the ponytail, or sorry, Jill from, was it 5? No, it's the one where she has a ponytail. Maybe it's from Revelations. It's one of the
five is well, she has because Revelations the same time as 5, but 5's when she initially gets that ponytail.
This character model of Cybil remind me of that a lot. Like it was like the first thing I thought of when you enter into the diner and she's sitting there at the table or whatever. It was just like, oh, like that kind of reminds me of the same. So anyways, that was just a random comment.
Yeah, so you kind of meet her and everything like that, and you'll run through multiple times. There's an interesting scene where like she's like, "Hey, get in the police car." I think this is actually after we talked about that house, because Harry goes to that house that he thinks is his house, or it was at one point, and he shows up there. And he's like, "Hey, this is my house," and the guy's like, "Oh no, we've been living here for like 15 years. Like, I don't know who the hell you are." He's like, "Get out of my house!" Yeah. So he just seems like this crazy drunk outside on a frosty day. He's like yelling at the dude's wife and everything like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Cybil comes by, and like takes him away. But then you're like sitting in the police car, and Sybil's trying to like, calm you down and everything like that. Like, well, maybe that's not your house anymore. We'll figure it out. And then at some point she gets out of the car. You're just like left sitting in the car. And you're like, do in a police car. And it's like, oh, I can move around now. So like, you're going there and you're trying to. And I sat there forever, like trying to figure out, like, what the hell? Open this. Oh, let me look through here. I'm like, I kind of wonder what that was gonna do to my game, because I'm in a police car. I'm like, she gonna come back and be like, what the hell are you doing in the front seat?
So this section, because it makes sense later, But so like I said, there's two sections in this game where you're just like stuck in a car, and so in this scene, it's like you're sitting right behind the driver's seat or whatever. You can move to the passenger right, you can move to the passenger forward, or you can move to the driver's seat. And each of them have the lock, so the lock's up down for the door. You have the door handle itself, and then you have like the roll the window down mechanic or whatever, But the windows only come down like quarter of the way or whatever. And I was
like child locks.
Like, what is the point? And when we get to the section in a little bit, but like the underwater piece or whatever, and like that starts to fill up, and like all we'll get to that when we get to that section. But anyways, like that one took me a minute too to like figure out what the hell to do, and then it's just like, oh, just get in the driver's seat, open the same door that she did, and then you get out, and you move on to the next section.
Well, and you got to pull the lock. That was the part that I don't know why I missed that. It's like, I know how to use a car door, but for some reason that got me. I had to search about 10,000 times through everything else, and I was like, oh, the lock, it's right there.
Yep.
I was pulling, because I was thinking, like, in a car, mostly, if you pull from the inside, it unlocks the door. I was like using that like philosophy.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell's wrong with this stupid door?
I was thinking it was like the sunroof or something at one point, because there is a switch. You can't interact with it, but there is a switch if you look up, like to hit the sunroof thing or whatever. So.
See, that would have made more sense, is that the doors were all locked, but then Harry could get out through the sunroof, because that would seem more logical. Like, that was why a cop car has a sunroof. I don't know, but so Harry gets out of there and continues on and whatnot. And then I guess one of the next characters you do meet, that's this kind of starts throwing a curveball at like what time frame is supposed to be. But when you go to the school and you find that girl Michelle like there, and it's like there's supposed to be like a reunion and so on like that. And at first I think it makes you feel like, oh, maybe it's a reunion for like Harry's thing and so on like that, until the girl there goes like, oh, who are you looking for? You looking for your daughter? And he's like, oh, wait a second. I think I went to school with her. He's like, well, no. She's 7 years old. You're too old. And she's like, no. Like, literally, I went to school with this girl. Like, you know what I mean? I know who you were talking about. Like, Cheryl Mason.
Yep. Yeah, and this is where I started to like really start to question the game, and like, and you just think about the title itself. I mean, just shattered memories, and like, what was the correlation of Harry to this school to meet this girl that knows his daughter that's older than he knows, and it's just like, what the fuck, and it makes sense later, when we get to that. But it caused a lot of confusion, but it also caused a lot of curiosity for me. And I think that's what kept me so engaged during this whole experience, was just like, every character you meet, every little bit of dialogue that happens between them, the cutscenes, all this stuff, it's just so vast. It just kept me interested, so it's very, very well done. But yes,
that's the thing is,
one in particular,
this is the game where like whenever you get to a cutscene, that's the most interesting part of the game. I feel like it's one of those ones, because even next you start getting these text messages like along the way too of certain characters. You don't really piece two and two at first, because you just think sometimes it seems random. Like, I'm walking through a school and I'm getting this stuff, and this Dahlia chick keeps like sending me her like things there or whatnot, and just like then you get random photos and whatnot, and then there's random photos of like Cheryl at some point. You're like, what the hell is all this? Like, and the context isn't there and whatnot. And then finally you run into Dahlia, or how you spell her name's?
It's Dahlia, I think.
Yeah. I almost want to say that the way that it reads is different than the way that she says it. Like it says Dahlia, but I want to say when she pronounces it, it sounds differently. But whatever, there's like this goth girl and whatnot like this all of a sudden shows up. And it took me a moment to realize, I'm like, oh, in the original game, this goth girl is actually the old lady that runs the cult. You know, that's who. I didn't, because I started putting that together. I was like, wait, because, you know, a lot of the characters you run into are all normal characters. I can't remember if you run into Michelle, though, in the original one, if that's a character. But
it's been a long time since I played the original game.
Of course, the nurse Lisa, she's in here as well too. You know, in a much smaller segment, but she's here. But yeah, that's who that ends up being. But you start, and this girl's just like, hey, you like, so, come on, Harry, what are you doing? You know, you look like a loser. Take those glasses off and whatnot, like that. You're like, what the hell is going on here? Like this, like, you know, like, I thought we were partying up tonight. You're just being such a drag.
Yep. Damn.
Which I kind of thought, like, the weirdest thing is, like, the ways that she, like, I'm trying to, like, put this together, like, for Harry's age range and the way that she sort of looked. Like, it seemed kind of strange because she's just kind of, she looks like a 2000s kind of like goth girl in a sense. But I'm like, but according to Harry's age, she feels like, because like if this was supposed to be back, like if that's her at like whatever, 19 or whatnot, you know, she seems a fraction older than like a high schooler, like just the way she sort of talks, even though I guess she could be high school. Yeah. Compared to like, you know, if that's when Harry would have known her at the same time. That almost seems like that would have been more like mid 90s, maybe. I don't know, for this variation of Harry when he's younger before, you know, if this is 2009. I was trying to piece all that together, but like, okay, whatever.
Because I started to as well. I started thinking like too hard about that. And I was just like, at the end of the day, like, whatever, you know, like, you know, but it works, you know, it works okay. You know, so. Yeah. But from what I understand too, I think her personality types, the way, well, all the characters for that matter, including like Cybil and whatnot too. So depending on how you're answering your questions in your interviews with the psychiatrist and whatnot, will change the way these characters interact with you. So like with Cybil, because I've actually experienced this twice because I had to restart the game over on the second run. Cybil like has the two that I've experienced. One, she was a complete dickhead to me, like, you know, just like completely mean and just like, you know, just very combative and whatnot. And then I had this other one where she was like super like nurturing, I guess, you know, like just like very much like, oh, how can I help you? And how's this, that, and the other. It's just a completely different interaction, you know, style. So I thought that was another really cool piece of like the psychiatrist to the actual gameplay itself, or at least the characters and how they interact. So that was really neat.
Well, that's like kind of the interesting is the different ways your character sort of evolves throughout this. I know about halfway into the game, I can't remember if it might be that second time you're in the car when you go in the water, because that's when like you're with Dahlia and she's driving you in a car, and you know she can't figure it. She seems so weird to you, but you seem so weird to her. And of course she drives off the road and the crashes into the water, and you got to break free, and you're inside the car trying to get out again. And you're like, and I was like overthinking it once again. I was like, you know what this is going to be like in real life, because this is something I've had in the back of my mind. If you ever drive over a bridge in real life and you're in there, if you wait, there's a part where the pressure equalizes between the inside and the outside, that when you get to a certain level, the door will just open. You can just do it like that. And that's what I was literally thinking the game was going to use some science logic here. And then, no, it doesn't.
So in the fucked up part is that the game, so like Spence explains, you're in a car with this chick, she fucking drives off the side of this bridge or whatever, you land in the middle of this river and you're just sinking, you know, and like you get down to the bottom and it's all in first person and whatnot. You're like sitting at the bottom of this river or whatever. And it's the same scene as being in Cybil's car earlier, where it's like, can try to open the door, try to roll down the window, try to undo the lock, this, that, and the other. When you hit the door, you unlock and you hit the door handle, it like pops open and it sucks right back in, you know, like there's pressure there or something. And I was like, oh, maybe I need to roll down the windows and fill the car up with some water so it can open. Nope. You know, it's just like, God damn it.
Next thing you know, I had all four windows down and nothing.
I was expecting a timed thing too, because I had all four windows down, but it only fills so far. Like it won't physically go all the way up. Because I sat there for like 3 minutes trying to figure out like, what the fuck am I doing? You know?
Yeah, you're literally sitting on the bottom of the river, and for some reason it only fills up like like there.
Like, you know, your chest, basically.
Dahlia's sitting there frozen for some reason, and and then it turns out what you had to do, and I didn't get it in time, was the radio thing. But this is something I noticed. I think this is an issue that I would have. I think it was an emulator one, because if I had any of those things where I had to turn objects, it was like it had a hard time getting that initial turn started. And I don't know if it was, sometimes there's that thing that happens in certain things where it has a hard time registering multiple button presses at the same time. And I was wondering if it was one of those, because one of the ones, it was later on, but when Lisa needed that stupid medication, oh my gosh, I was having such a hard, I just felt like I was like a special ed kid trying to open those bottles. I could not get, I was sitting there, I was like, dude, come on. And I finally kind of figured out sort of like a makeshift workaround where I could get the controller to work, but like I had the hardest time trying to get that. And that was the same with that radio. I had a hard time, but I didn't really notice it there. Trying to tune it, and I just couldn't get it right. And it went in an overshot, an undershot, and so on. And then eventually the game just takes you to the top, like a creature starts bashing on the sides.
Yeah.
And apparently what you're supposed to do is get it tuned in right. I never could get it tuned in right, and that takes you up. But instead, it probably affects the way the ending is. Of course, Cybil's dragging. God knows how she got you out of there.
Yeah.
She's dragging you out of the ice water.
Yep.
And but this is a revolutionary moment, because depending on how your game's running at this point, Harry can have 1 out of 4 different outfits on that changes here, and it tells you where you're kind of going, you know.
Oh, okay.
And my Harry had the pink sweater vest on, which was called like the good dad kind of, because I kind of looked it up later what all those things meant, and like one of them is like, so it's like you had like the good dad version where like, you know, you were focusing on the mission, you were trying to find Cheryl and everything like that. Then there's the one, it actually sounds funnier, where it's like drunk dad, where like you take anytime you were offered alcohol, which I don't remember being able to take being offered alcohol and being able to say, yeah. I don't remember there being like a yes or no.
No, I think what it's saying, because I looked into that too. I think there's one of the psychiatrist meetings shows you a bunch of images, and a lot of them look like bottles or whatever, you know. And if you're stating that they look like beer bottles or whatever, that plays into the alcoholism side of it. And there's multiple other trigger points throughout the game, from what I understand too. But similar, because like I thought about that too, about the alcohol thing. I was like, I don't remember. I mean, like at the very beginning, like, you know, the psychiatrist is like dropping ice cubes and pouring himself a drink and shit, you know. But I'm like, outside of that, like, I saw the options for bottles. I didn't personally choose those, you know, but whatever. So
yeah, because so there's like that where you can kind of have like the drunk father where he's just, you know, out there and so on. And I think that makes sense, though. That's how it probably is. It's probably not necessarily a yes or no answer. It probably happens all in the psychiatrist thing, and that converts how Harry's interactions go from there. Because I was also kind of wondering if some of the things would happen too, because there's some of the in-game scenes where you're talking to somebody, but it allows you to go into first person, almost once again like Metal Gear Solid 3, where you could it allows you to kind of pick where you want Harry to gaze at. So, you know, I kind of wondered if that made a difference, like if you were Harry and you look down at the girl's chest or anything like that.
Probably, because there is that ending where he's like, you know, so he's an abusive, you know, drunk or whatever, but it also plays into like the sexuality side of this game too, you know. And like, if you, I don't know what the trigger points are, because I've only played through it once, you know, or whatever, but I was reading about that is a thing. I just don't know exactly how you do it, you know. So. Yeah,
because that's where I saw all the stuff in there and so on like that. And obviously I felt like, well, I had the good father like ending the whole way through. I had the pink sweater vest on. I did all the right things. I got the super happy ending.
So I read something too, and I don't know where this comes into play, but okay, so like one of the very first keys we get in the game, you know, you have to walk up to the mannequins, and there's like a set of 3 jackets or whatever, and the very first one that you unzip has the key in it, and it's just based off your choice. What does that affect? What does that do? Do you know?
I didn't even think about that one, but I have a feeling that every single thing all has like almost like a point scale that like, so you have like, because I think there's 4 core endings. Of course, there's the UFO ending too. I think 3 or 4 endings, and then the UFO one. So I probably each one adds a point to each section, and then as it goes on. So probably that weird one there is, I bet you just like the outfit things, probably just like each one, maybe one goes towards drunk dad, one goes towards, it's like there's like good dad, drunk dad, party dad, almost in a sense, which you would think party and drunk dad are 2 different ones, but they are 2 different ones. You'd think they'd be the same, but for some reason it's 2 different ones. You know, and then there's I guess there's also just bad dad, I guess you would say. Because, you know,
because my ending was Harry was just like insanely abused by the wife character, or whatever, and like that's, it's like a sad ending. It was just like, oh my god. But I guess whenever we want to get to like what is actually going on in this game, then I'll further explain what I know. But
yeah, as I was gonna say, because we can lead up to those kind of endings, because those endings like this whole game, the whole ending, I know it feels like a spoiler thing, but that kind of like brings in all the talking points that you really want to get to, is because of all this stuff here, and so on, and just each little thing you had, because you're still trying to make your way. Like Harry learns that the lighthouse for some reason is where Cheryl's supposed to be, and so he's making his way that direction and so on. He has his different interactions. You go over to Lisa's house at one point, the nurse, and this is one too where apparently has, you're supposed to go in there and you got to open the bottle, and she asks for like, could you get me a yellow pill or whatever for her headache. I don't know if it changes depending on what it is, but you have a choice of 4 different pills, and I guess if you give her the wrong pill, she could die. She technically dies anyways, but it's either you kill her or she slowly dies on her own. There's also another point, though, I know that she's like, why don't you go over there and just go watch TV while I go get changed? And it has one of those moments where you could sit there, you're like, okay, watching TV. You turn like, oh, she's changing. I better be the good father and stare at this TV. Or you could be drunk dad and just stare at the TV.
Yep. No, and again, like I think that each one of these characters that we come across are just so well written. I like how they are enveloped into this universe too, because this game very much like I said from the very get-go, like I was, where's the cult? Where's all the things? Where's the set? It's not about that like at all. It's about this journey that Harry's on to go find Cheryl, more or less, which it was just like one of the core premises of the original game too. But the way that this game paths and the way that it tells its storytelling and the way that it shows its characters, I think is just wonderful, way different than the original game, but again, core themes and all that, so.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's so radically, it's the core thing, but it's just, everything's kind of radically different, but it focuses so much on that psychiatrist encounter and then how you interact with the people around the world. I know even the small things, 'cause I kind of read this later on too, it's like if you answer all your phone messages that you keep getting in text, that says that you're I think that puts you in the good dad thing because you're concerned, but you could ignore all those too, and just keep going on. So there's so many of those little factors that come in there. But what happens is Harry finally finds the lighthouse, and then he realizes what the lighthouse is. That's what the psychiatrist place is called. And I don't know if it was ever mentioned earlier in there that his place was called the lighthouse. Maybe if you looked around in there, you could see a document or something that said it. But I never noticed that until I didn't put 2 and 2 together that the lighthouse was the psychiatrist place.
Yep.
Right off the bat until I got there. But you kind of get there, and that's when everything kind of really starts to come together. Like Cybil pulls you out of the water, you go on in there, and so on. Yep. And you figure out right here, spoilers, that the whole time that's not been Harry inside there. That's been Cheryl's been in there, and she's the one that's been, going through all this because she had a traumatized, life growing up and everything like that. And her father passed away 18 years ago, or whatever the heck it was. Was it really 18? Oh, yeah, I guess so. She's like in her mid-20s, almost 30s by this point. She's estranged from her mother and everything like that because we learned that Dahlia is Harry's wife, and so he pretty much, he's like he went after like the total like rebel rouser punk rock girl and everything like that, like the bad. He's like I might be this kind of like, I look like a nerdy like writer and everything like that, but he's like I chose the wild one there, the one who's probably doing drugs and getting into fights and everything like that.
When this revelation was made, I knew that there was something up because again, like experiencing throughout like the totality of the game, like there was something like just weird going on, and then to finally like understand like, oh, this is being told through Cheryl's eyes, and oh, shattered memories. Okay, this starts to make sense, and blah blah blah. But I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really cool twist, and I think it cemented me to be able to tell people like, it's a way different experience. Play this game though. Like I think it was so cool, for that to actually happen. And now we get to talk about all the implications of like what this experience really was. Now that we know that it's all through the eyes of Cheryl, which I think is really neat.
Exactly, and that's why I think it's like one of those ones you got to kind of mention that part, which doesn't take away from the actual playing of the game, but the fact is this is where all the biggest talking points start to come is because of this ending here and so on, and the fact that you realize that Cheryl's in there and she's trying to cope with the loss of her dad and how that sort of affected her life this whole time, and you're answering those questions based on that. So Cheryl, you are supposed to be Cheryl the player in a weird way, and you're trying to see this, and there's multiple there's kind of like the pre-ending, I guess you would say, and that's when Harry comes through the door. And Harry's got after the next time he drowns in the water and Cybil pulls him out, he's now wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And when I first saw that, I'm like, oh no, I got the drunk dad thing going on. Why is he wearing a Hawaiian? I got party dad. What did I do? Yeah. Was this because I turned and looked at Lisa for 2 seconds while she was changing?
Yeah. Damn it. Damn my intuition.
I was trying to go for good dad the whole time, and I got party dad.
It's funny. That's funny.
But then I kind of forgot. But the very first cutscene you see in this game, he's wearing the Hawaiian shirt, and he's taking Cheryl, to the amusement park and so on like that. That scene that keeps going over your ear is like, I love you, Dad.
I love you, Dad. Oh, because it plays it like 4 times.
It plays it a lot, so that thing's stuck in my mind. So. But then, so now you got the psychiatrist and whatnot talking to you there, and then you have multiple versions of Harry walks through the door in a sense, and just the way that it kind of breaks down, there's the one that I think the good ending is the one where he comes in and she kind of almost accepts his loss and goes, you know what? Life can still go on. It will be fine. Yeah. Then there's the one where she gets angry at her dad for dying on her. Because I sat down and watched all the other endings. What the heck? There's a third one too.
Yeah, I got them up right here. So there's the love lost ending, which is the standard good ending. It's exactly what you said. He comes in, she cries, she kind of is accepting of it, whatever. Get the drunk dad ending. She gets really mad, she get pissed, and whatnot. There's the Sleaze and Sirens ending, which is the unfaithful womanizer ending, apparently. Yep. And then a wicked and weak ending, which I think is the one that I got because it's called the cowardly ending. So ChatGPT says Harry is seen as weak, cowardly, and pathetic, unable to protect his family or himself. Instead of a strong fatherly figure, Cheryl remembers him as somebody she can rely on. She rejects him for contempt, seeing him as a failure. And this ending symbolizes disappointment at the sense of being let down. I'm pretty sure this is the ending that I got because Harry's just getting shit on by Dahlia or whatever, she's beating him up all the time and he can't do anything about it.
Which I want to go back real quick. There's one more pivotal scene that I kind of wondered because when you come out of the water again, and right before the lighthouse, or right before you're going to go to Lighthouse, you find Dahlia. It's weird because you're like Harry as in 30-year-old Harry or whatnot, or whatever the heck he is, I guess, at that time period. And then it's his wife, so it's okay. Yeah, but then you get on this houseboat thing. She's like, it's a long ride here. You want to bang? And you're like, what? It's the weirdest thing. It's one of those weird conundrum things. It's like, is it weird to be? We were. Whatever, 15 when we met, and now she's 17 or something right here. It's a Japanese video game. I'm 32. Oh, let's just go along with it. And that was another one too, because it's you don't choose that. It just kind of rolled along. Because I remember there was I have the Hawaiian shirt on. He's banging, his young wife here. It's did I get what kind of ending did I get?
Yep.
And I guess I don't know if that always happens, if there's different variations that goes through.
Yeah, because it happened on my ending too.
Yeah, but I guess that's the way he's because I thought that was is that going against hey, you think that it'd be good to be no, I just want to find our daughter or whatnot that, because by this point he realizes it is his wife and so on that.
Yeah, but and then the UFO ending, which I actually didn't even know that was a thing. So if you watched that and what happens, I'm so curious.
Those ones are because every Silent Hill game has a UFO ending. That's kind of like a bonus thing that they sort of have. And I did watch the UFO ending on this one. This one's kind of because they do it in an animation form and so on like that. Okay. And so it's going on, and it literally, for some reason, the main character from Silent Hill 2 walks in, and he's all like, hey, is it time for my meeting? He's like, oh, no, that's next week. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, closes the door and walks out. And he's like, it's funny thing. He's like, I'm doing couples therapy with that guy, but I haven't seen his wife in a long time. You know, and then it cuts to like, it shows, it goes back to Cheryl and she's going on, and then she turns into a dog because there's a dog ending in the first one too, and then it cuts to him and he's an alien. So it's the really goofy ones.
Yeah.
But I know on mine I got the Love Lost ending, because then I got the where she kind of reconciles with her mom towards the end. Because did she do that on yours when after she walks out the psychiatrist, she meets back up with Dahlia and. Yeah.
Not that I remember, no.
No, you just get that like in which I remember, because when I watched that one's kind of like, I know you're people like that's not what their reaction is supposed to laugh, but like that one where like Harry's getting fucking slapped around by Dahlia. Yeah. I couldn't help but just laugh at that ending like that.
Well, that's how, you know, because again, I sat down start to finish. I played this in like, 6 hours or whatever, and like to be that invested and that enthralled through that the entire, and that's how it ends. And it's no,
it's like, Jesus, you piece of shit. Nobody wants to read your stupid books.
Yeah. I laughed. I might be cynical, but I laughed.
So. That's how I felt too. I couldn't. Well, I laughed at all the bad endings. I think I know that's like one of those ones. I know some people are like, oh man, that's like that hits hard, because I saw some of the YouTube comments like just from that like the endings page or whatnot. Like, man, that really got me there. And I'm like, I busted up laughing when I saw the drunk dad where he stumbles onto like the porch. He's like, get daddy another beer, and then he like throws the bottle. He's like, fucking piece of shit family.
That's great.
And then there's Party Dad, where he turns on the camera like he's like sending you a recording from like on his party boat, and he jumps back into bed, and then Michelle shows up there, and then Lisa shows up. He's like, hey, we're just gonna be partying out here tonight. Your daddy loves you.
Well, and that's something else that I suppose we forgot to kind of mention too. So like this game presents itself in a lot of like found footage, style. That totally makes sense now that we know that everything's through the eyes of Cheryl, but leading up to this, like Spence said, like the menu of this game is like a found footage style, like VCR style thing, like where you're like flipping through the menu, you hit the play button, you hit the, the whatever. I thought that was really cool too, and especially like I said, like now knowing, that this is through Cheryl's eyes, and just thinking about that ending alone, it's just like, well, found Dad's old porn tape, it's just like,
yeah, party day. So you kind of get those and so on like that, and and then I guess the good ending, or whatever, the happiest ending you can get out of all of them. Remember, the one I got is, so it starts off like literally that first scene that you see at the beginning of the game where, she's running out, they're packing up the car, or I guess, no, that happens first, because it does that again, but then it cuts again to like another thing, and it shows kind of something similar, but instead Dad's now packing up the car because he's leaving. But they're kind of on like, he's like, you know what? I'm sorry, Cheryl. This is one of those ones. Sometimes mommies and daddies don't get along, and this fucking bitch right now.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't. They're all cordial in this one. She's not beating him or anything like that,
Yeah.
And she, he's trying to make her understand like why this has to happen. But it's kind of like, you could tell because almost like the angle that the camera is, that she's probably only like 6 or 8 years old when this is kind of happening, and so on like that. Like it's really probably not that much farther past that when they go to the amusement park at the beginning. The amusement park, which is probably the one that is in Silent Hill 3. That you start off in with all like the dead rabbits and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
Which,
So there was there's some more like theme stuff that I'd like to touch on. So fortunately, like I've been using ChatGPT so often that it's starting to recognize like my questions of what I like to ask in my research and whatnot. And a lot of it boils down to like, I've done so many like synopsis of this level, synopsis of this, blah, blah, blah. So as I was doing my research, the AI platform just straight up asked me, it says like, based off your previous searches and Soma and blah, 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 and all these other, like, do you want me to do this for you in Silent Hill? And I was like, yeah, sure. So what this did is it broke it down per level and what those levels mean theme wise and whatnot. Cool. I thought it was really interesting. So the town, so like our very intro scene, like when we're in the town and whatnot, it says Harry's determination mirrors how she wanted to believe her dad would fight through anything to find her, which I can see that, you know, like, I mean, that's that whole scene. He's Cheryl, you know, he's just like constantly looking. When she ends up in the school embodies her memories of being an isolated, grieving child trying to function in a normal society. And I was like, okay, I can totally see that with the characters that are introduced there and all that. Residential suburbs, Lisa Garland's house. Says the houses around here reflect normal family life that Cheryl feels she missed out on after the crash. So after Harry dies.
I love how Lisa's like house is considered normal. It's like she lives in like an apartment.
I know.
Like I think it's like a studio apartment too. It's like she's obviously not getting paid a whole lot to be a nurse there in Silent Hill.
Exactly. So then we have the police station. The station itself embodies judgment and being interrogating, mirroring Cheryl's being judged for her trauma in her life and therapy. So more or less like talking about the therapy sessions that she's in.
Oh, we forgot to kind of mention that you do find some photographs throughout the game that Cheryl has been like, she's gone to jail a couple of times and so on. Yeah. Like she's acted out. So. Yep.
So then there's only like 3 or 4 more. The hospital scene that says nightmares here. The nightmares here are Wait, sorry, hold on. Medical imagery symbolizes helplessness and permanence of loss. I was like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see that. The mall, a place of consumerism and family activity, is an ironic backdrop highlighting Cheryl's longing for a normal upbringing. Okay, can totally see that too. The amusement park is this area. Cheryl associates fun childhood places with the pain of losing her father, and then the lighthouse. Here, it's where Cheryl faces the truth. Therapy sessions and lighthouse scenes merge. Cheryl accepts her struggle. Yeah. So anyway, so it just kind of boils it back down. But having synopsis like per, so the reason why I found this so interesting is because of my comments in our post-trauma episode about me thinking that characters are more not actual characters physically in the world or anything like that, but their emotions, you know, and this very much feels like that, but in its level design and whatnot of like what Cheryl was experiencing growing up, you know, and why these shattered memories are bringing us back to these locations, meeting these types of characters, and like the tonal, like what that totally means. That again, you don't know until you get to the end of the game of like finally having the revelation of like, oh, this was through Cheryl's eyes. And really, that's what really kept me this whole last week of, because I played a week ago today, you know, I had my whole travel schedule up in the Pacific Northwest this week, and I'm just thinking about this constantly of just like, damn, like they did so good in that, because I love having a game that like has me sit and think after the fact. Because upon initial completion of this, I was like, that was okay. And then I slept on it, and I slept another night and another night, you know, and like I remember texting you like 2 days after I completed. I was like, you know, like after a couple sleeps on this, like, you know, this has got, you know, this is actually worth some time, you know, to talk about and think about. So yeah, they did a very good job.
That's the same way I felt too. It was one of those ones like there's a lot of just neat stuff in here, and just the whole storytelling aspect of it, like. It does give you a lot to think about, because I probably beat this game like a week and a half ago by now, and yeah, it's sort of still stuck in my mind a lot better, because sometimes that, you know, after a certain amount of time you start to lose stuff, but I keep remembering things on it and so on, and just the whole experience of going through it and the characters and just the alternative way, and you know, comparing it back and forth with the original Silent Hill, because one of the interesting things I think about in the original Silent Hill too is when you kind of get to the end of that game. And the whole point, you're looking for Cheryl, but you never actually find it, because you realize that I think they're like sacrificing Cheryl to like the fucking demon gods or whatnot and stuff. And then Harry, like the good to Harry's like, he's like, well, I'm not leaving empty-handed. I'll take this demon baby and raise it as my own. And it becomes Heather in Silent Hill 3.
Yep.
I'm not. Give me like, hey, I've been searching this whole goddamn game. No way am I leaving without a child. No child left behind.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, so. Yeah, so it's like he gets the reincarnation of Cheryl as Heather. But
yeah, and like I said, like I think the thing that took me by most surprise is I was anticipating, again, walking into this being as blind as I was anticipating to see something like that towards the end of this game, like something about the cult, something about like the dark demonic stuff and all that. And it's really not the thing, you know. And again, it all makes sense by the end of it that, oh, this is Cheryl's mind, you know, like this is her internal struggle, you know. It just happens to take place in Silent Hill, you know, like basically. So
yeah, that's the interesting thing about it, too, because that's what I was kind of expecting. I was expecting, like, I knew it was a reimagining, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, it's probably going to be still pretty similar story-wise, you know? And it's like, oh, no, it's completely different. Like, in a sense, it almost, once again, you could just take the Harry and Cheryl character and flip them around. And you could even leave the other characters in there realistically and just have it be somebody else that interacts in Silent Hill.
This easily, we talk about this a lot on this podcast, but I think this easily could have ripped Silent Hill out of the title entirely, just made it could have just been called Shattered Memories and just like a brand new IP. But, you know, again, I think another core thing that we talk about often on this podcast is like the fact that, especially these types of developers, your Konamis of the world, your Capcoms of the world, they don't like to take a ton of risk, you know? And I think that this was probably one example of like, they took risk. I think they were extremely successful, and I'm surprised that they didn't try to do, like, I'm surprised that an IP doesn't exist based off of this. Like, this was their experimental, we're going to use Silent Hill as the thing because we know it'll sell well or whatever. Let's see how people think about this. But at the same time, now I'm curious about games like I said, Until Dawn. You name the movie game, you know, like that style where it has like, you know, a psychiatrist like style, like mechanics in it and whatnot. I'd be so curious to know if those developers of these newer age games like have some kind of influence from this, you know, in some sense, you know. So
oh, I can 100% see that. Like, this mind's like one of those ideas like you see and you go, well, that's a great idea. Just take that and run with it, you know. Because in this time period, because the weird thing about Silent Hill is Silent Hill is really popular for 1, 2, and 3. 4 kind of was there, but I felt like people started fading. Well, 4 also came out in that time period where survival horror games were not really in anymore. Yeah. Like, that was kind of like the tail end. Resident Evil 4 kind of came out, and it kind of, in a weird way, it revitalized like survival horrors, but it also put them in a completely different path of action. Yep. So past that point, like, Silent Hill games kind of had a hard time. You know, and it's one of those ones, like, they kind of came out like Shattered Memories did, Origins, Homecoming. There's one other one for 360 PS3 era too. Yeah, drawing a blank. There's also another PSP one as well too, and they started to become kind of just like back burner games. Like, they weren't major titles. Yeah, because realistically, Silent Hill has been kind of like out of like the limelight until that Silent Hill 2 remake. That's the first time it kind of came back in a long time.
Yeah, because I haven't even thought about Silent Hill until Bluebird, you know, launched that trailer all those years ago and whatnot, you know. And yeah, I mean, like, and especially now, so Bluebird's coming with Chronos: The New Dawn is their next like new IP, and I'm super excited to see that because I thought the way that they did the Silent Hill 2 remake, I thought was like really, really cool. And I would love to see their take on a more action-y Dead Space-y style game or whatever. But also in research of this, you know, like, I found out semi-recently that Bloober's doing Silent Hill 1 again. Yeah. And like, I am so interested to do, because inevitably we'll have to play the original PS1 game together, you know, and then talk about it. And then I want to see what this remake's going to be, you know, and then compare all three, you know, and just like see all that, you know. It's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to it. Well,
I have a feeling too that both it's going to be Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid 1 are going to be remade in the next couple of years. Yeah. You know, that's going to be the two big ones for Konami. And I know that's kind of that's where a lot of the bread and butter is going for some of these companies, is just the remakes. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. It's very interesting to kind of go about it, you know. But it is kind of nice to finally see Silent Hill kind of coming back kind of strong, because really it's like, Resident Evil was like all the survival horror games really fell off the face of the earth for, like, even if they were still there, they just passed, in a sense, Resident Evil 4. Like, that's the only one that continued forward, you know. For a long time there wasn't really, there was Alone in the Dark, that one on 360. It kind of just there and went. There was no Dino Crisis. There was, Onimusha even faded out with PS2. So many of them, of course there were some newer ones like Evil Within and so on like that, but it's kind of amazing how Silent Hill just that was kind of it for a while.
Well, and we're missing one major one. It's literally coming out in a month. We get Silent Hill F, and this is the first Silent Hill trailer that I've seen. I mean, granted, Silent Hill 2 is Silent Hill 2. I will play that to the end of time, but this is the first new Silent Hill game coming out that I've experienced since 3, to where I'm like, fuck yes. This looks awesome, you know, and it doesn't look like a traditional Silent Hill game, you know, it's like very Japanese horror.
Which is cool. I'm kind of glad that the Japaneseness is kind of coming back into it as well too. I know Silent Hill is, you know, takes place in America and all that stuff, but sometimes I like that kind of Americana that comes filtered through Japan's eyes.
Oh yeah.
So, just like Parasite Eve 2 and everything like that, you know. But I know Silent Hill F, it looks like it's a Fatal Frame game. Like, that's like the vibe that I get from it. But I'm so excited for that, and the fact that I'm glad that they're putting that out there and just being like, no, we can do both the remakes and the new one. I think what happened was that they saw how well Resident Evil did, you know, with the remakes especially, and then combining that with the new ones, it's like, they're like, yeah, we can do the same thing too.
Yeah. I 100% agree. You know, it'll be cool to compare, especially like, you know, brand new Silent Hill game versus something like this. You know, it'll be fun to compare whenever we do that episode. So
exactly, and then I think it'll be fun at least before that Silent Hill 1 remake comes out, because who knows, that could be a couple of years away. But would be cool to go through Silent Hill 1 again, because that's the one, like, it's one of those ones, like, I like a lot of Silent Hill games, but boy, that first one, just everything about that one is the one where it fires on all cylinders for me. It's so good.
Very unfortunate. The version of Silent Hill 1 on the Ken Hank emulator system that I bought for my Steam Deck is South American or something. So it's like all Brazil? The Brazil version. Exactly. That's what it is. So one, it's running at 50 hertz, and two, it's all voice acted in Spanish, basically. Not Spanish, but Portuguese, probably Portuguese or whatever, you know, like whatever the language is. But so I'm gonna have to find a ROM for that, you know, to download that, because I'm not playing that version. But,
that's like the 50 hertz is worse than the language. You know, well, that's weird. That's at 50 hertz. I didn't think. For some reason, I thought South America was still in NTSC.
I don't know. It's running at 50 though, because I have my that's the nice part about the Steam Deck too, is that I can pull up my frame counters and all that. So
that's goofy. Yeah, you don't want that. That's like the worst, because then the game runs even slower.
Yep.
You know, but it's funny when this is like I was like, I know you're trying to make this thing worldly, but like, do we really need the Brazil version of Silent Hill on here? You know?
Yeah, exactly. But I'll find it.
So. But yeah. We're going to have to be doing some more Silent Hill stuff as time goes on. But yeah, overall, though, I think Shattered Memories is well worth going out of the way and checking it out. Realistically, get it on ROM, because, those prices are insane for this thing. Until we get a good recession coming up, that game's going to probably stay real high.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those ones, like, it's definitely, I'll say it's a Silent Hill game for somebody who really likes Silent Hill. Like, you know, I probably would not be like one of those ones that, like, don't make it like the first Silent Hill game you jump into. But if you've been playing through a handful of them and you haven't ever tried this one out, I think it's really cool story-wise. And the upside is it doesn't take you much time. 5 or 6 hours. You can go through this whole thing, get the experience and so on like that, and, really take it all in.
Yep. I'm 100% with you on all that. I think I thought it was a wonderful game. You know, like I'm glad that I have it on this emulation deck now. Inevitably, like I probably will play it again sooner or later, just because, like I said, it's caught my attention so much that I've been thinking about it for a week, that it's like, now I kind of want to know about, like, what does change if I choose the second to right jacket instead of the first, or like if I, you know, any of the variable things, you know, within the game, you know, like I kind of want to experiment with it a bit more. So yeah, to the audience, I'd 100% play this. You know, it costs you a pretty penny in physical form, but you know, like, just emulate it and call it good, man. Because I think it's wonderful. I think it's great.
Yeah, because I think it's one of those ones you can kind of probably blast. If you want to play a second round of this, I bet you could kind of blast through it pretty fast too. Like, you know, you could probably do it in like 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, you know, and just kind of it'd be almost kind of nice if you somehow some way just bypass those stupid running scenes. That'd be like just so you could see those other endings. But you know, I was going to say one more thing, as I just noticed this the other day. I haven't tested it out yet. I keep meaning to. But I noticed somebody put the Dolphin emulator on the Quest.
Oh.
And I didn't think about it at first, but I was like, wait a second. That means if they integrate the Wii motion in there, the Quest could be really good for that, where you could have a one by one, like almost like perfect sync with that. I'm like, ooh,
Sure.
that might be the way to play games like Silent Hill, Shattered Memories, and
Interesting.
even other ones like that too. I was like, I keep meaning to test it out, and I just totally space. But then it's like, I want to see if that kind of does. But
Interesting.
there's always other cool, neat ways. But yeah, check this one out. Till then, go to Old Man Orange. Well, never mind. Don't go to oldmanorange.com anymore. That's old school. Go to YouTube and Spotify to hear more Silent Evil podcasts, along with Old Man Orange podcast, talking games, movies, and all that fun stuff. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.